are wearing, the sons are wearing a ribbon on your jacket. The reason we do this, it actually is an ancient tradition. It comes from the Torah. When Jacob learns, or he's told that his son Joseph has died, he's distraught, he's overcome with emotion, and so the first thing he does is he begins to cry. And then he takes his clothes and he tears them as it's an outward sign of mourning. In some circles today, people do still tear their clothing, but in others, the tradition is to take a ribbon and to tear it. You may choose to wear this ribbon after today, and if you do, people will know how to reach out to you, will know that you're in mourning. But the thing about the ribbon is that we'll never be able to be fused back together. In some ways, the heart is the same. We'll feel a place where Lois is missing, but we hope that in time, the heart will come together in a different way, and the memories of her will help heal us. And so I'm going to give each of you who are wearing the ribbon an opportunity to tear it. We should tear up. No, because it's You'll repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Dayan ha'emet, which means blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who is the judge of truth. It's been said that one has achieved success who has lived well, who has laughed often and loved much, who has gained the respect of intelligent human beings and the adoration of little children, who has filled her niche and accomplished her task, who has left the world better than she found it, whether by an improved copy, a perfect poem, or a rescued soul, who has never lacked appreciation of earth's beauty or failed to express it, who has always looked for the best in others and given the best she had, whose life was an inspiration, whose memory is a benediction. I think of these words today because Lois Ruderman's life was truly an inspiration. She was a woman who lived her life well. It was a life that was filled with good humor and lots of laughter. She certainly gained the respect of others for her intelligence, but also for her kindness. It was a life in which she tried to make the world around her better. She was never one to focus on material possessions. Rather, she knew what was important in life. She appreciated the beauty of the world around her, things like flowers and the beach and the mountains in Aspen. But most of all, she appreciated the connections with her family and friends. Lois Ruderman was truly a woman who loved much, and boy, did she love her family. She loved her children, Bob and Carol, Stephen and Lisa, John and Debbie, Richard and Beth. And she adored her grandchildren, Annie and Anthony, Scott and Christina, Becky and Adam, Julie and Dan, Stacy and David, Sam, Rachel and Daniel, and Aaron and Barry. And how blessed she was to have become a great grandmother many times over to Rose and Theo, Mara, Robin, Asher, Jordy and Jake, Bo, Mac and Drew, Ozzy and Stella. She was an amazing sister to Willard and to Marcia, and she was an aunt to so many nieces and nephews. I know that all of your lives were better because Lois was a part of it. And she not only looked for the best in everyone, she brought out the best in everyone around her. And so there is no doubt that today there will be tears, as there is so much we will miss about her presence in our lives. But I also hope that we'll be able to smile as we think about the impact that she had. At a moment like this, we are so blessed to have one another, but also to have the words of our tradition, words that are meant to give us strength at a time such as this. In the well-known words of the 23rd Psalm, there's a line that says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." Those words are so unbelievably true right now. We are living in dark, somewhat scary times, and to lose a loved one makes that even more difficult. But the text reminds us that we will move through this time. We'll do it together with love and care for one another. On the inside of your pamphlet, you can find the words of the 23rd Psalm, and I'll ask if you'll join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As we think about Lois's life, the one thing that I understood was she was a true matriarch of an incredible family. She was an amazing mother and grandmother and great-grandmother, and when Marshall was here, she was a truly devoted wife. The words of the Proverbs speak of a woman such as this. She's known as a woman of valor. Eshet chayil miyimsa v'rachoch mipninin michra. A woman of valor who can find. She is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke of the following date with tears, but he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For the dash represents all the time they spent alive on earth, and now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that still can be rearranged. To be less quick to anger and show appreciation more and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you lived your dash? Lois Ruderman arrived in this world surrounded by so much love. On the south side of Chicago, she was welcomed into the arms of Nat and Francis. Nat was in the produce industry, meaning the family always had lots of fruits and vegetables on the table, while her mother, Frances, was a homemaker. This proved to be a big job, as Lois was one of 6 children. Bud and Gloria were older than her, while Ronnie, Billy, and Marcia were younger. The siblings were very close as children and would be throughout their lives. As a middle child, Lois had the advantage of having older siblings who were protective of her, while she took great care of her younger siblings. She had many fond memories of her childhood, such as the large family gatherings at holidays and other times. Lois was always surrounded by many friends, too. She was very popular. As she would say, her dance card was always full. She was athletic and always full of energy. She was also very bright and extremely well-read. Lois would go on to graduate from South Shore High School and then work downtown at Saks. There she was even asked to model, as she was truly a beautiful woman. It was around this time that she met Marshall Ruderman at a wedding in Hyde Park. Some say it was love at first sight. Supposedly, Marshall went home that night and said he met the woman he was going to marry. Marshall was just drawn to Lois. He adored her and loved everything about her. He couldn't stand to be apart from her. Even to be in a different room was too much. Lois appreciated this unconditional love and the fact that Marshall took such good care of her. They soon got married at the Ambassador Hotel, followed by a honeymoon in Miami, then Havana. 9 months later, Bob arrived, followed by Steve, John, and Richard. As a mother, Lois was a natural. She was calm and didn't sweat the small stuff. She was also very loving, and she had such a special relationship with each of her sons. And when her sons brought home their spouses, she accepted each one of them too with such kindness. As the family began to grow, Lois would become a grandma and even a great-grandmother. She was committed to being a part of everyone's lives, never wanting to miss a birthday, a graduation, or a wedding. She was always supportive and happy to be included. And her family always wanted her to be a part of the special moments and all the ones in between, because Lois was the life of the party, and her presence was always welcome. Her family always took such good care of her and made her feel included. This became especially important after Marshall died. While this was hard for her, she never complained. And as she aged, she did it gracefully. And as her memory began to fade, she still had a comforting smile on her face for everyone. Lois Ruderman was a loving mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, aunt, friend, and more. But most importantly, she was a lovely human being. May we all strive to follow the example of this extraordinary woman, and may we all try to fill our years with as much life as Lois filled hers. Zichrona livracha, may her memory be for a blessing. Amen. At this time, we are going to have the opportunity to hear from the people who truly knew Lois the best, her sons, as well as her great-granddaughter, Rachel. Bob?
That was very nice. Well, thank you all for coming and helping us to remember my mother, Lois Ruderman. Several years ago, someone asked me if my mother believed in God. This, of course, is a difficult question. To answer, I'll try and share a few of my memories. First, Mom, born in 1927, was a product of the Depression, where a nickel was really a nickel and every penny counted. One of my favorite pictures from that time is when she was about 5 years old, photographed by an itinerant photographer. Let me explain. It was the Depression, jobs were scarce, and work was wherever you could find it. So some photographers would travel door to door to take pictures and later return hoping to sell the pictures. Most of the pictures were posed and very formal, but Mom's photographer took a very spontaneous picture. It's adorable. Her hair was slightly messed up, her sweater unbuttoned and not in place, and even the socks were opposed, one up and one down. Yet the smile and twinkle in her eyes reflected her vitality for life. Her family, the Branskys, was large. Her father, Nat, was one of 12 kids. She was the third of 6 kids, and now I'm the oldest of 4 boys. Family was always important. Working hard and achieving was important. Yet there was always an element of adventure and freedom. But yet we always had responsibilities, from dinner dishes to summer jobs. I remember at the young age of 6 being sent to the grocery store about 3 blocks away by myself to buy a loaf of bread. And I was told to come home with the bread and the change, and it better be the exact amount of change. Mom was a voracious reader. Often she could tune out the chaos around her that 4 little boys could generate and get lost in a book. She would also read to us when we were younger. She supposedly read me the entire multi-volume children's encyclopedia, start to finish, before I had my first birthday. Mom always encouraged what psychologists now call collaborative inventive play. She would send us boys and say, go play, go downstairs to the den. And my brothers and I would build large cities with our trains, blocks, and Lincoln logs. Or we would reinvent board games like merging Monopoly and Easy Money into a game we called Monopomoney. Or our favorite activity was building elaborate string forts in the living room using surplus thread from my father's blouse factory. Mom was very fortunate to be married for 60 years to a man who deeply loved her. Dad actually idolized her, and the little boy in me always wondered what was behind those stolen kisses and hand-holding. Mom and Dad could always have fun, and lots of friends and dinner parties, lots of trips, always an adventure, even if sometimes misguided. I remember one road trip out west. My dad let my mom drive while he took a nap. Several hours later, he woke up several hundred miles off course. Mom had gone to Cedar Rapids rather than Rapid City. Later in life, they could have an adventure right in the shopping mall parking lot, forgetting where they parked their car and then having mall security drive them around until they could find it. But Mom and Dad, for all of their misadventures, did have each other's support. I remember one time at the Botanic Gardens African Violet Show, Mom entered some of her plants in competition. Now, many of you know me and know that I know a little bit about gardening and plants, and I realized that her violets were good, but hardly the best, and I said, how could she expect to win? Well, I looked over at the judges' table, and there was my father, big smile on his face, as he proudly awarded her a first-place ribbon. My mom was also an accomplished student. She didn't get to really go to college after high school. It wasn't done much in 1945. But about 30 years later, she went back to school, got degrees from Barrett College and the Graduate School of National Louis. She then used her studies to work as a licensed substance abuse counselor. I was told by her supervisor at Highland Park Hospital, where I worked, that she was good, that she was compassionate, focused, and very helpful. But the little boy demon in me jokingly imagined her counseling sessions going something like this. Stop it. I said, stop drinking. Wait till your father gets home. I said no. But above all, Mom's often passive parenting skills stand out the most. I've already mentioned the responsibility, the inventive play, and the problem solving, but she also imparted a sense of positive thinking and resiliency that we have. She would recite this poem to me often. It's not well known, and I've only recently learned of its author, a man named Walter Wintle. If I may, if you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but you think you can't, it's almost a cinch you won't. If you think you'll lose, you've lost, for out in the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in a state of mind. This can-do positive attitude always served me well in life. So the answer to the original question, did Mom believe in God? Well, another memory. After snowfall, when I was young, we would go outside and shovel the sidewalks a little. Sometimes not doing a great job. Mom would say, don't worry, God will take care of the rest of us. After all, she would say, God put it there and God will take it away. So I guess she did believe in God after all. By the way, the same goes for raking leaves. Thank you.
I'm Steve, the number two, but Bob, it's really funny because I read our daughter Danielle, who can't be here today. She's in California. I read her that poem last week. She's about to enter a contest, which she hopes she wins across the country. But I wanted to thank everyone for coming here, of course, today, and those who are streaming, who are watching this online. We want to thank you as well. And that includes to include them and their grandchildren, our daughter Danielle and our son Michael, and Marcia Malkus, who called me last night, Terry's mother, my mother's youngest sister, to wish us all well, and so we wish her the best. But I know that Mom would want me to mention to everyone here a special thank you to Bob and to John and to Richard and their wives, Carol, Debbie, and Beth, for their love, hard work, and dedication. You know, I spent over 40 years in geriatric medicine, and I came into contact with many families with this, of course, natural history. And I could never remember in all those years such a loving, caring family. I saw this with the Stender family, and I saw this elsewhere. It's a theme that runs throughout of our family, which I'm very, very proud of. And also someone I wanted to thank is my wife, Lisa, who has always been there cheerleading on the side and hosted Mom and Dad for every year for weeks and sometimes months to live with us, and it was our good fortune that happened. And so my mother, as you know, enjoyed 97 years of a life well lived, and everyone who met her could feel her sense of joy and appreciation, her love of family and friends. And as Bob said, her greatest happiness was to host a holiday celebration. Joel, you probably remember, there'd be like 100 people in our house, which probably could fit 60, but somehow it was never crowded. It was just this love and all-inclusive for friends and family and just about everyone. She never said no to anyone. It was an overflowing place of love and family and friends. Yeah, I think of our mother as calm and cool, smiling and sincere in her style. And everyone managed to feel that sense of safety and happiness and being comfortable around her. She was always a source of comfort. And even in her advanced age, this source of comfort, and grace, and gratitude was extended to her caregivers, and her caregivers really enjoyed taking care of her. She was a subtle and yet powerful voice that made you feel that she was someone that you could turn to in a moment of advice, counsel, or even troubles. And she was always there for you. As Bob mentioned, she was an educated woman who read a veritable library of books in her time. She would always be reading a book, and the four of us would be running around the room, causing all kinds of chaos. And somehow she was able to concentrate on the book and not worry that we wouldn't break things, which we occasionally did do. Absolutely. And in doing so, she really prized education and learning, and that message was not lost on her children or her grandchildren. You know, I want to just take a moment to expand upon the string story, the magical thread story I like to tell. Some of you have heard it. I'm sorry, but if you know me, I repeat my stories now, don't I? So the story is simple in that our father owned a manufacturing business. They manufactured ladies' blouses, which I always found humorous because they had 4 sons. So it did not serve an immediate purpose, but it certainly put a roof over our heads. And so there was a collection of thread that was always available around our house from this factory. And it was multicolored, and it was baskets that my mother kept around for different sewing projects. And so Bob, of course, led us on one of our misadventures where we would tie up the house in a veritable spider's web of multicolored string cord, we called it. And we would go from one piece of furniture all around the house, back and forth, backwards. It took us hours, but we had a few hours because they were out on the town with some friends. So my mother and father came back from their evening out with their friends. They opened the door, which just barely could open. They walked into the small little entryway. And if you can imagine, we're all hiding underneath this web of these multicolored threads. It was incredible. And this was Lois. This was my mother. She looks at the entire thing. And instead of being angry or embarrassed, she looks and she laughs. And then she says, "That's beautiful." And at which point we were all relieved. But anyway, that was our mom, looking at the moment and seeing the grace and the beauty in it and not losing the fact that this was a beautiful moment. So she was not a great cook and stood in great admiration of her daughter-in-laws. All of them are great chefs, I might add. All of them are great. And yet she knew the right ingredients to create a beautiful home filled with love, stability, and happiness. John coined the phrase of magical blend. You didn't think I'd give a speech without using your phrase, did you? No, you're not yourself. Anyway, they had a magical blend, if you will, of kindness, discipline, and wisdom that permeated the home we grew up in. So let us celebrate a life well lived, as has been said here, and a family well raised, and a great lady well loved. And thank you.
More along the same theme. Thank you all for coming. What I view as a celebration of the life of a fantastic person rather than a sad occasion. Yep, Mom liked to have a party. The more the merrier, she would say, and isn't this marvelous? You've heard some of her history and gotten a picture of the topsy-turvy world, but really fun life we had growing up. But I'd like to share a few of the stories that I personally remember about growing up with Mom to help color in the pages a little bit more completely. My earliest memories were mostly related to going to huge family events with zillions of cousins roaming around and lots of chaotic fun. And it's kind of interesting, Bob had the story of Mom reading him childcraft before he was 1. And one of my earliest memories was Mom reading aloud to me the entire childcraft encyclopedia before I was 5. Apparently she read it multiple times. She absolutely loved books. She didn't have a college degree, but always had a book in her hands. A couple other book memories come to mind. It occurs to me that she was actually the first audiobook. She read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich to us while we were driving to Florida once on a family trip. I think her love of reading has rubbed off on all of us. Now, Mom was partially deaf, not profoundly, but enough to make life with 4 boys tolerable. She had incredible powers of concentration. Like one day, she was lying on the green shag carpet in our living room reading War and Peace. while the four of us boys were wrestling around her and creating all kinds of havoc. The phone rings and rings and rings. I leave the tumbling and answer it. It's for Mom. Mom, no response. Mom, no response. Mom, no response. I go back to the living room. She's reading intensely. I shake her. No response. I close the book. Her eyes keep darting back and forth. Mom, phone call. Finally, a response. Education was important, but she was never a taskmaster. I never remember her telling me to, quote unquote, do your homework. You just did it. I do remember some of her pithy little comments like, when scoring 99 on a test, she might say, well, what happened to the other one? If something in school was not quite right or things weren't going well for me, she'd say, don't worry, honey. Remember, cream always rises to the top. Her love of education culminated when she went back to college in her 50s, received a BA, and finally a master's at age 60. Mom was fun. She got us various animals for pets: dogs, cats, rabbits, turtles, baby alligator. Once, I had a baby frog that got loose in the house. We didn't find it again for 6 months, and amazingly, it was still alive. Mom loved the beach. Brothers chipped in $50 apiece, and we bought an old sunfish sailboat in 1963. Mom was game, and although we didn't have the slightest idea of what we were doing, we set it up and went out. We flew down to Wilmette in 15 minutes. Then we began to understand the concept of tacking upwind. It took us almost 5 hours to get back. But that's how we learned how to sail. That's what Mom was like. We learned by doing. She played tennis with us. She took us on the L to see the Cubs play so many times when I was 8. I still remember the lineup and the players' batting averages. And then there was tea. If you wanted to talk about anything, there was always tea. You were uncivilized if you didn't drink tea. As she got older and well into her 80s, she got more absent-minded. The first noticeable sign of her forgetfulness was marked by how often we had to replace the tea kettle because it had burned. We stopped counting how many tea kettles we replaced. As her memory started fading, more significantly, we became accustomed to repeated and often strange requests. One really stands out. Mom loved cats and dogs. And one day she told me there was a large cat that came to visit her at night. She said this many times and even had taken to setting out a bowl of milk and some food for the cat. One day, she was complaining that the cat had been keeping her up at night. I told her I would search for the cat. I truly thought she was remembering one of our pet cats from many years before. When I finally went over to appease her, I couldn't believe what I found. To my surprise, an incredibly large gray cat was living under her bed. I could go on with story after story, but I'm just so grateful to have been the son of such a fun, wonderful mom. How did she do it with 4 boys, besides being partially deaf? Playing lots of games, especially Monopoly and baseball, doling out lots of responsibility with very little discipline and almost no technology. Mistakes, yeah, there were a few along the way, like advising me to take slide rule class instead of typing in high school. If you're under 40, I'll tell you what a slide rule is later. But her message was clear and consistent. Be curious, love the world around you, don't overparent or make too many rules, play games, and you can achieve anything if you put your mind to it. Finally, I want to thank Debbie. She and my mom had a special relationship. Mom never taught us much about girls. They were a strange, rare species in our household. When I started Debbie, her family was told that the word on the street was that the mom, Lois, would be reading while the 4 boys were hanging from the chandeliers. Well, maybe, just maybe, that was part of the secret to her success. Goodbye, Mom. We love you. We will never forget the lessons you taught us about life and how to live it. What could be a better legacy for all of us than that?
Rachel? Yeah.
We're now going to hear from Rachel, who's going to speak on behalf of the grandchildren, the ones all mentioned before, as well as Michael and Danielle.
All right. Hello. How many people can say that they had a best friend 60 plus years their senior? I can. Some of my earliest memories involve my grandma Lois because grandma was a constant figure in my life. As a kid, she taught me how to appreciate flowers, love tea, play gin rummy, and of course, how to get lost in a book. As a young adult, she never failed to give me her take on school, boys, and all of my stresses. As you've heard, stress wasn't really her thing. I have an amazing memory of a trip to Colorado with my grandma and her sister, my great aunt Gloria. That trip, my sister Julie got engaged. When everyone left to go to their Chicago engagement party, I had some quality alone time with the two of them, who we nicknamed the LOLs, the little old ladies. They had the ball and lived it up on their mountain vacation. For me, there is no Lois without Marshall. Our grandparents were legends, and not just in the foodstuffs sample line or at the Glencoe Beach, but to all of us kids. They took us to Cubs games, partied with us at our college bars, and always said yes to every sports game, dinner, and party. They taught us that the best life partners are best friends. And of course, my grandma's secret, the secret to life is picking a husband who thinks you're perfect so you can do no wrong. Most of all, my grandma taught me about grit, compassion, and being unapologetically yourself. Not many people would go back to college in their 50s, learn Tai Chi, and continue to tear through books even when she could no longer remember how they started. I was so proud to be her granddaughter. One of the silver linings of dementia is you can tell someone great news over and over again and see their reaction in its purest form every time you do. Last year, I got to tell Grandma that I was pregnant with a girl due in May many times. Her face would light up, and telling her never got old because I knew she was truly excited. When my daughter Stella was born on her 97th, and now what I know to be her last birthday, it felt meant to be. Grandma, may we always share your love of life and commitment to family with the next generation. I can just hear Grandpa yelling, "Lois!" And I'm so happy you are together again. I love you.
There's no music? Oh, so there's just going to be some music. Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming. Can you hear me out there? Okay. Little test of the microphone. Contrary to what you all have either explicitly or implicitly heard today, I was my mother's favorite son. See, it helps to go last, right? There's an advantage to being the last speaker. In all fairness, though, my brothers and everyone who knew Mom, please know I surely jest in this matter, for it is inconceivable that Mom favored any one of us over another, and she always made us feel special in her eyes. This is going to sound weird, but I am truly happy to be here today. You see, due to health events I experienced earlier this year, I could have easily been the one in that box instead of Mom. So, in a way, I am grateful to be here. I am grateful and appreciative of the tremendous outpouring of support from family, friends, and others, those who are both here and not here today. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. How does one sum up 97 wonderful years of life in 5 to 10 minutes? It's impossible. Here are a few overarching thoughts. Can this go any higher? Okay. Mom was truly a spiritual individual, in addition to a lot of what you've heard already today. As a small child, I couldn't have been more than 6, 8, 10 years old, I don't know. I once asked her about death. She said she was not afraid of death at all. I asked her what she thought it was like, and she said, quote, "It is peaceful." which kind of set my mind in a different mindset after that point. Regarding her religious belief, my feeling is that she believed in a very spiritual monotheism rather than a personified monotheism. And speaking of spirituality, Mom's family, the Branskys, is legendary in its ability to intuitively suss out events that are occurring or about to occur. So much so that one may inquire to themselves as to whether they have witnessed telepathy or clairvoyance. And those who know the Branskys I see a few heads nodding out there. For example, Mom recounted that she knew the exact moment that her father passed away, for she felt a shock sweep through her entire body. Well, it turned out that Grandpa Nat had passed away at or very near that exact moment. It is for this very reason to conclude by playing a song in tribute to Mom. Flashback to September 15th, 2009. David, who was a best friend of mine, passed away after a long battle with cancer. His brother called me the night before the funeral and asked if I would play the song I am about to play, to which I agreed. Now, having just overnight to learn and practice this song, the pressure was on. My son Barry, who was very young at the time and had a special connection with David, burst into tears every time I commenced rehearsal of the song. Barry would continue to burst into tears each time I attempted to play this song that night and well afterwards. So this is kind of where it gets a little more along the spiritual lines. Fast forward exactly 1 month later to October 15th, 2009. I played the song that I'm about to play and within Barry's earshot. And he said, "Dad, that's the first time you've played that song where I haven't cried." Okay, here's where it gets weird. Just then, at that very moment, the phone rang. It was Mom, in an uncharacteristic tone of voice. "Dick," she said. I said, "Mom?" She said, "Dick?" I said, "Mom, what's up?" She said, "Your father just turned code blue. Come to the hospital." Coincidence? Most likely. Extrasensory perception? It's possible. We see, hear, and sense so little, just a minuscule part of the vast wavelength spectrum. What is in there that we don't perceive? I'm not here to answer that question. I'm not sure anybody knows. But regardless, it is now time to close the cycle. The following is a song credited to John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Hello? Hello. It's really close. There are places I'll remember, though my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. All their places have their moments. With lovers and friends, I still can recall. Some are dead, and some are living. In my life, I've loved them all. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you, and these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new, though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my high life, I love you more. In my high life, I love you more. Goodbye, Mom. I love you.
There are certainly places we will remember and moments we will remember and times we will remember that we shared with Lois. But as long as we remember her, we know that she will continue to be a part of us. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have achievements that are based on hers, we will remember her. But as long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now and always will be a part of us as we remember her. Lois's wisdom with snow removal may have been inspired by the book of Job. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we say, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Please rise. El Male Rachamim, Shochin Bimromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utichorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Edalea Bat Noach Mordechai Ufrema, Shahalacha La'olama, Ba'al Harachamim Yesterecha Besater Kanafav La'olamim, Bayitzor Bitzor HaChaim Et Nishmata, Adonai hu nachlata, v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava, v'nomar, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, Grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved Lois, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will be at Waldheim Cemetery in Forest Park. The family will be together at the Ruderman residence at 101 Park Avenue in Glencoe today, following the interment to 9 p.m., and then tomorrow from 6 to 9 p.m. Memorial contributions in her memory to the Chicago Botanic Garden would be appreciated. That information is on the service folder that you received upon entering the chapel. If you did not get one, we have them as you exit. For those of you who are joining us online, all that information can be found on the funeral home's website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing a car in the back of the procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. Use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to a cemetery. At this time, I invite the grandchildren, their spouses, great-grandchildren to come forward to escort her casket from the chapel. I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place. And also, if the daughters-in-law want to do that as well, they can. But we're going to escort the family from the chapel at this time.